There are some times during the year when grass plants are more sensitive to grazing than others. Spring is one time when we really need to be paying attention to the pressure our animals are putting on the forage. Probably the most sensitive time of all is during what's called the boot stage. During this growth stage, the seed head is being elevated up through the stem. This is a grazing sensitive stage because if the elevating seed head is removed, the plant will have to mobilize new resources and start all over with a new seed head and stalk. Furthermore, none of this regrowth can occur if the soil moisture is too low or soil temperatures are too high. A couple basic rules of thumb are: when the plants are growing fast, rotate your animals through different pastures fast. When the grass has already set seed or is dormant, you can leave your animals in a little longer. Don't graze the same pasture the same time every year. On dryland pastures, it's a good idea to take half and leave half. If you are grazing irrigated fields, you might take up to 80 to 90% of the feed. And remember, during the growing season, you should always have some leaves left so that those plants can be actively making food for themselves. Once the grasses have grown up, set seed, and gone dormant, we need to shift our thinking from individual plant health to thinking in terms on a broader or landscape scale. In other words, grazing during the dormant season has very little impact on plants themselves, but overgrazing is still a concern. Leaving some residual forage during this time will help stabilize the soil and will increase the amount of rain and snow that infiltrates into the soil profile instead of running off. Grazing during the dormant season may be a useful strategy, especially for dryland small acreages. Frequently, as soon as green grass appears in the spring, horse owners turn their animals out to start grazing the new growth and stop feeding hay. Then, once all the grass is gone, the owner begins feeding hay again throughout the dormant season. This is problematic because of the sensitivity to grazing at this time that we discussed earlier. An alternative that may seem upside down at first would be to keep your horses in a corral during the entire growing season. Then, once the grasses have gone dormant, let your horses out for some grazing. Most small acreage owners with horses are going to have to feed hay at some point in the year. And with this upside down grazing strategy, your grass gets to go through its entire growth cycle without being grazed every year. If you are getting tired of feeding expensive hay, just remember that hay is pretty cheap when compared to the price of rehabilitating land. On irrigated fields, you have much more leeway than you would with dryland areas. In fact, with some irrigated fields, it may be a good idea to graze the forage down frequently to keep it lush. You might think about designing your pasture layout so that every pasture has access to one water source and shelter. For some landowners, locking horses up in the corral at night with access to water and shelter may work well. And this also provides some rest for your pastures.